Howdy everybody! You know, I often find myself a bit exhausted by the way that the internet latches onto the idea that a piece of media can only be the best or worst thing ever. If you've ever been on Reddit for more than 10 seconds, or God forbid Twitter, you know exactly what I'm saying. There's very seldom a happy middle ground where a movie can be good and enjoyable and understand the fundamentals of storytelling and be worth your time. And because I'm genuinely exhausted by that, I thought I'd try to mix things up today by sitting down and talking about a movie that I just really enjoyed. So yeah, today I'm going to be talking about 2016's underrated Irish coming-of-age musical, Sing Street. A movie I've only admittedly seen a couple of times over the years, but has really stuck with me. The film was written, directed, and partially produced by John Carney, the man who brought us Once in 2007 and Begin Again in 2013. Two films that happen to get nominated for Best Original Song in their respective Academy Awards, and in the case of Once, even won once. It follows a teenage boy in Dublin named Conor as he's taken out of an expensive private school and is placed in a Christian Brothers school named Sing Street. Young Conor is quickly targeted by a bully and is shown to be something of an outcast at his new school, but is eventually motivated to start a band with a few of the other kids he knows. Why? Because he met a girl, of course, specifically the mysterious Rafina, an abandoned teenager who lives across the road from Sing Street and is an aspiring model. What follows is a coming-of-age story that deftly blends John Hughes' Brat Pack era stuff with a trip down a songbook of 80s hits and originals to land at something that is easily one of my favorite films from 2016. And don't get me wrong, because I'm not the only fan of this movie that's out there. It made something like $13 million at the box office against a $4 million budget, and while it didn't get an Oscar nomination for Best Original Song like Carney's earlier work did, it did receive a Golden Globe nom for Best Musical or Comedy, and a stage adaptation that ran off Broadway in 2019 and again in Boston in 2022. Plus, while we're on the subject of the stage show, that off-Broadway production even got nominated for a couple awards. As for the film itself, I'm not going to pretend that it's some tour de force showstopper that changed the face of cinema forever, mainly because it isn't, but it is a film that I think more people deserved to see, and that come award season was completely overshadowed by La La Land. Which, if you're anything like me and enjoy a good double feature from time to time, pairs very well with Sing Street. So today, I thought it'd be fun to gush about Sing Street for a bit in a sort of review/appreciation video. On top of that, because I actually want you to go out and see the thing, I don't intend to spoil anything too crazy about it. You'll see clips from the movie, and I might talk through a few details about it, but my goal is to give you the gist of why I think you might enjoy the movie, not to serve as a substitute for seeing it. Anyway, the first thing I want to talk about with regards to Sing Street is its intended audience. If you grew up loving John Hughes movies, musicals like Grease, High School Musical, or stuff like Easy A, Sing Street was basically made for you. It's a coming-of-age movie about a gang of kids that form a band to impress a girl. It's perfectly calibrated to be a quotable, funny flick with the odd insight into what it's like to go through your adolescence.
What does type of set even mean? How can you be both things? It makes no sense.
It means that I'm stuck in a shithole full of morons and rapists and bullies, and I'm gonna deal with it, okay? It's just how life is. I'm gonna try and accept it and get on with it. I'm gonna make some art.
So how does that affect our music?
Positively.
As if that weren't enough, this movie also came out in 2016. The same year that 80s nostalgia all but entered the stratosphere thanks to the first season of Stranger Things hitting Netflix in July of that year. That show basically cranked our nostalgia for the decade up to 11, and Sing Street fits neatly within the canon of media about those years in a way that's easy to sit back and enjoy. However, not that many people realize this because it never got to fully capitalize on that 80s nostalgia boom because it came out in April. Though you could actually argue that it may have been helped a smidge by having its DVD drop just 11 days after the Netflix show. At any rate, it's an openly nostalgic, though not revisionist movie about the 80s that people who may have lived through the decade can comfortably take their preteens or kids to. Or at the very least, it could have had a second life on a streaming service. which for the record, it kinda has since I've consistently seen it get offered on streamers like Roku and Plex for free with ads. However, I can't remember ever seeing it on a more mainstream or premium streamer, and I can't spot any easy to find proof that it's ever been on one. As for me, I only heard about the movie because of an IndieWire review it got during the tail end of its theatrical run, which is kinda nuts if you ask me. I mean, the movie literally combines multiple things that I'm a huge fan of and that advertisers definitely had more than enough data for me to know about. So like, you'd think I would have gotten a few ads about it since I probably would have been within its target audience. Hell, I even live close enough to Manhattan to have caught a screening of this movie in theaters had I known it existed. But because I didn't until it was too late, I basically had to wait 3 months for it to come out on DVD. That said, the wait ended up being well worth it because the movie really does feel like a lost 80s teen classic at points. I've already name-checked John Hughes a few times already, so I'll give him a rest, but the movie feels right at home alongside films like Back to the Future, Footloose, and Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It's a bit more grounded than those movies were, but it has the same energy and playfulness to it that makes it just as lovable. Still, despite all the teen romance and music on display here, it is ultimately set against a recession in Ireland and is actually elevated because of it.
Many take the boat with barely enough money to survive a few days in London, but still they emigrate because they see hope across the sea, hope they cannot see in Ireland.
On top of that, the film wastes no time establishing the difficult home lives for each of its main characters, but interestingly shies away from making any major judgment calls about them. Rather than bash you over the head with exposition about it, the film allows these details to sit in the background while Conor and his friends focus on their music. Whereas Back to the Future was a film explicitly about the past and nostalgia, see my last upload if you're curious what I mean by that, Sing Street is about kids escaping their predicaments at home through the power of music. There's a certain found familyness to the titular band Sing Street and how they're more than their home lives when they're together.
Being in a band is like being in the army. Everyone has everyone's back.
It's certainly downplayed in favor of making the movie more fun and approachable than an accurate document of the era, but it's still there. And though this is somewhat off topic, it's also hard not to look at this movie and wonder how much of it is autobiographical for Carney. For starters, Sing Street is a real Christian Brothers school that he actually attended, and he was even in a band back in the 90s called The Frames.
Well, the origins of the film come from our director, John's experience of his childhood.
You'll be the new lad then. Shut up!
When I was 12 and 13, we were kind of broke, and I was in this rough school, and there were a lot of kids who wanted to beat me up, and I thought it would be cool to sort of just explore that a little bit with this kid, and that's where the film began.
Basically, the movie has heart, and it isn't some coldly written nostalgia piece. It has genuine reverence for 80s culture, and it goes out of its way to demonstrate why that music was important to people. Whereas folks in the 60s had the Beatles and people today have like, I don't know, Taylor Swift, the 80s was all about the new wave. It was about Duran Duran, The Cure, Hall & Oates, and The Clash. It sounded different from anything that had come out before it and came with the promise of a brighter, more successful future for the kids that listened to it.
Hey, it's not exactly the Beatles, is it?
Oh, you know, will you go outside and start up the time machine there so we can all go back in time for Dad, Conor?
Well, if this is the future, we're all screwed, aren't we? I mean, look at this guy. He's not even singing live.
There's also something to be said about the fact that it takes place in Ireland, of all places. Now, it probably just takes place there because that's where John Carney is from and all, and hell, writers are going to write about what they know, but there's something so refreshing to this big, dumb American's eyes about it. Because, in case you haven't noticed, I'm not Irish. What? Outside of anything I may have learned from that Sinead O'Connor song, I don't know the first thing there is to know about Irish culture. So for me, it was great to see a different side of the 80s. One that was definitely recognizable to a guy who consumes a lot of media from the decade, but was also different and more interesting because of it. This even has the added benefit of underlining how similar the teen experience has been over the past few decades. Sure, some things have definitely changed over the years, but Sing Street shows us that the broad strokes of adolescence are still the same where it counts. If you've ever seen 2019's Blinded by the Light, it's a lot like how that movie showed us a different side of the 80s. For those of us who weren't from Ireland or Thatcher's England, we get to see a part of the world that goes wholly underrepresented within media. But on top of that, London does come up within the context of the film, and with it, something that embodies a version of the 80s that we recognize. It just isn't the focus of the story because Conor and Rafina's relationship is. Which, okay, is honestly so freaking cute.
Sing that song off the radio. You know, the one by Aha. Sing it. Sing it.
Take, now slap. Take on me, take me on. That's all I know.
There's a sort of manic pixie dream girl adjacentness to Rafina as a character, but one of the things I really appreciated about Sing Street was that it never becomes too self-indulgent in that side of her personality. We get glimpses of a certain wistfulness from her, but it never outstays its welcome. More often than not, it's really just a peek into why Conor is drawn to her. Additionally, we also get to see the truth behind the mask she wears in her day-to-day life too, which means that she's a multi-dimensional person and not a caricature. Even better, stuff like this isn't limited to just the characters themselves. I was talking about how it was interesting to see Ireland in the 80s a minute ago, and I think that something that Sing Street does exceptionally well is depict it in equal doses of realistic and romantic framing. It indulges in beautiful shots of Ireland and the various places these characters find themselves, but it's also occasionally shot like a drama or documentary. There's a great shot about an hour into the movie where it shows Conor and his siblings dancing to Hall & Oates before transitioning to the middle of Sing Street, figuring out how to play a song in the vein of it that exemplifies this, as well as all the other little music videos that the band shoots throughout the movie.
Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up. Oh. That's great.
They provide a really nice contrast to things because, for these characters, music, and modeling in Rafina's case, is their ticket out of the tough situations that each of them find themselves in. And I say this as a guy who basically spent his teenage and college years making dumb videos and short films with his friends, but Sing Street is so true in how it depicts teenage creativity and how it can serve as an escape or outlet. For starters, the cast is actually composed of teenagers. Like, our main character Conor is literally played by a guy who was born in 1999 and had to have been roughly 15 or 16 when they shot this thing. And because of that, the music video sequences feel more natural to me. This movie was the guy's film debut, and the performance he gives as a teenager finding his way comes across as being vaguely rooted in reality because of that. Additionally, the material is perfect for this exact situation. There's complete honesty to Conor being hit to some new music by his older brother and then stumbling along with his buddies until they've effectively written their own version of it and amalgamated elements from the music into their personas. Just as my friends and I would watch, like, Fight Club or something on a Sunday night and then end up filming our own parody of it come next Friday, Conor would listen to The Cure's In Between Days and then end up writing his own knockoff called A Beautiful Sea. It doesn't matter that the song itself is derivative, and if anything, that speaks volumes to the way that art can be emotionally transformative to the people who enjoy it. What's great about it is that it's the result of a character taking charge of something they can control in their lives in order to try and improve it. And not only is that wonderful and funny and oh so relatable, but the songs are also pretty freaking sweet too. And that brings me to something I'm really excited to talk about, as well as something that's pretty important when it comes to a musical. The music. Drive It Like You Stole It, Up, Brown Shoes, it's all good stuff. Derivative at points, maybe, and yeah, I think Brown Shoes might be a Beatles nod because they have a song called Old Brown Shoe, but whatever. But solid, and most of all, authentic to the 80s. And I stress the authenticity of it because all of these songs were composed by a team that was led by Gary Clark, a singer and musician who actually had a commendable run of hits in the UK back in the day with his band Danny Wilson. Heck, their song Mary's Prayer is a genuine jam and even peaked at 23 in the US. So there's a certain authenticity to be found in each of these songs because it isn't just some schmuck using synths and calling it 80s. It's a guy who actually lived through the decade and knows what the 80s sound like. More than that, it's a composer who went head to head on the charts against some of the bands he's now emulating. And if you want to give yourself an Inception migraine, may have been on the charts when this movie takes place too, for all we know. And because of that, none of these songs really miss. My least favorite song in the movie, Riddle of the Model, may only be okay, but it fits its place in the narrative of being their first crack at writing a song, and is still pretty catchy outside of a riff that's very in line with stuff like The Vapors is turning Japanese, let's just say. Plus, the entire scene that revolves around it is pretty hilarious and filled with the sort of kids playing with the video camera antics that this movie revels in, so it'd be hard to seriously complain about this song. Once again, aside from the whole turning Japanese Eastern mysticism riff. As for the musical high point of the movie, Drive It Like You Stole It, it genuinely deserved to be a pop hit back in the decade and even got 3 Best Original Song nominations from various award shows. It's a genuine jam and was a song I returned to fairly often after I first saw the movie. And the scene the song is used for is just, well, I actually can't talk about it without spoiling a major plot point in the movie, so you'll just have to take my word for it when I say that it's a well-crafted, thoughtful use of a Back to the Future reference. Anyway, I think you get the point. Sing Street is an exceedingly fun and well-made movie. It's the exact type of film that would have done gangbusters back in the day of Blockbuster, Redbox, or even the early days of streaming. But despite all the things it has going for it, like the fact that it's going to be a Broadway musical one of these days, the fact that it made like 4 times its budget back at the box office, and the fact that it got nominated for a bunch of awards, not that many people actually know about it. And like, that's a total shame, especially because this came out in 2016, the year that Stranger Things made us nostalgic for the 80s again, and a lot of people were talking about musicals again thanks to stuff like La La Land. A movie that Sing Street is actually kinda similar to. Let me get this out of the way real quick, because I don't know if I'll ever get to make a standalone video on the movie. I freaking love La La Land. I saw the thing twice in theaters, bought the Blu-ray on day one, and literally spent the holidays in 2016 traveling halfway across the country while blasting the soundtrack. It isn't my favorite musical, that's the Blues Brothers in case you were wondering, but it feels like a movie that was algorithmically generated to appeal to me. It's my favorite Damien Chazelle film, one of my favorite performances from Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone, and I even think it's a better movie than Sing Street was. But I genuinely think that both movies are extremely similar at points, and that it's borderline criminal that nobody thought to push Sing Street harder after La La Land came out. Some of this is about to sound a bit surface level, but bear with me. They're both nostalgia vehicles that place a premium on doing things the right way, with Gosling actually playing piano on screen and Gary Clark writing new 80s songs. They're both love stories between people who dream of playing music or being an actor or model. The characters are focused on trying to improve their lives through their passions and have a dark night of the soul when they realize that it may not happen for them after all. Gosling's character has something of a coming-of-age arc over the course of his movie, starting as a stubborn musician with his head in his music like Prince's kid in Purple Rain, and slowly becoming a club owner, not unlike Prince in Graffiti Bridge. Wow, yeah, okay, that's actually a little weird. And it's not hard to see him as the endpoint for a character like Conor. Sure, a lot of these are standard screenwriting beats and shouldn't come as a shock to anybody, which is why I didn't even bother calling them spoilers, but they're handled in fun and different ways. Both movies also happen to hold great reverence for 2 musically unique and well-regarded eras in movies. La La Land is a total sucker for the golden age of musicals, which ran from the 30s through the 50s. Similar to how wider aspect ratios were used as an incentive to get people off their butts and into the movie theater as opposed to watching TV at home, Technicolor was getting used to create experiences that were unique to the theater, and musicals used that to great effect. It's part of why La La Land is such a bright and saturated looking movie. Likewise, Sing Street is all about the 80s, a decade that's synonymous with MTV and the shift from auteur-driven filmmaking to the modern age of blockbusters and IP that we live in today. As such, Sing Street is appropriate in how it's about a teenager using pop culture to carve out his own identity. It's about a would-be auteur finding himself by engaging with what's hot. He may have started making those music videos to impress a girl, but he's also impressing upon himself the value of self-expression. What I'm trying to get at with all of this is that La La Land's monumental success in 2016 probably shows that Sing Street deserved a bit better than what it got. It may be a different movie with different goals than Chazelle's film, but it shares some of its DNA and does it with a decade that a lot of people have nostalgia for. At the very least, the movie should have at least gotten more of a cult following than it did. Like, had it come out in 2006 or God forbid 1996, I genuinely think that this would have been a hit on VHS or DVD. I mean, I don't know if it would have ascended to the ranks of, say, an Adventureland in terms of how reassessed it would be once it hit home video, but more people certainly would have seen and talked about it. At any rate, I'm running the risk of starting to talk in circles about this. My point is that Sing Street is a very fun movie. It's got great music, some interesting characters, and a wholesome but just nuanced enough story to hold your attention for its breezy hour 46 runtime. On top of that, it's usually streaming for free somewhere with ads, so it's pretty easy to get a hold of too. If you like stuff like Blinded by the Light, Danny Boyle's Yesterday movie, or just like really enjoy John Hughes in the 80s, Sing Street's worth your time. Anyway, that brings us to the end of this video. If you haven't seen Sing Street before but are thinking of checking it out now because of this review, feel free to tell me in the comments. On top of that, if you have a movie you want to recommend to me because of something I said in this video, or just because you think I'd like it for some reason, feel free to drop it in the comments along with why as well. If you want to follow me on Twitter or Letterboxd, you could also do so by following the link in the description. And if you like movie and TV podcasts, you could check out my podcast, Media Obscura. It specifically looks at old and obscure movies and television shows, and while it is on hiatus right now, I'm hoping to bring it back in the future. That said, there's also close to 100 episodes already, so yeah, you've got some stuff to listen to if that's your sort of thing. Last but not least, you could check out my novel, Guppy Falls, on Amazon or Kindle Unlimited. It's a coming-of-age, friends-to-lovers romantic comedy set in 2013. If that sounds like something you'd like, check it out. So yeah, bye.
What's this? Homework. You're good. Get better. How'd you know with your boyfriend anyway?
It seemed like it. Pulled off in his car, music blaring. He's pretty cool.
What was he listening to?
Genesis.
He will not be a problem.
Really?
Trust me, no woman can truly love a man who listens to Phil Collins.